Welcome back. This is part 4 of my Learn PHP coding tutorial. In this series, I'll be introducing you to the basics of PHP and helping you get started. This tutorial series is designed for beginners who have very little or no experience with PHP, as it will cover many of the basics. However, most of the things that we learn in this series will easily translate to many other coding languages. If you are not familiar with PHP, what it is or how it works, I recommend you watch the first 3 videos in this tutorial series. In the last episode, I explained what a variable is. In this episode, we are going to look at how to interact with and manipulate PHP variables. We learned in our previous episode that we can assign a value to a variable using the equal sign. We're going to explore a number of other operators that can be used to assign values to variables or used to perform calculations with variables. We'll start with numbers. This works on both integers and floats. Let's say we have a variable with a value of 45. To increment the value of that variable, you can reference that variable and use the ++ operator. This will increase the value by 1. And to decrease the value by 1, use the operator -. If we echo each of these, we'll see the result of that operator. If we wanted to add more than 1 to a variable, we could use the operator +=. This will actually reassign the variable to the value of the variable plus whatever comes after the equal sign. So for example, a + = 5, we can see that our result is now 50, or 45 + 5. We can do the same for subtracting using the operator -=. A - 9 will now become 41, or 50 - 9. This also works for multiplication and division, such as a times = 2 or a divided = 3. In addition to reassigning an existing variable, we may want to assign the product or result of 2 numbers to a completely different variable. For instance, we'll create a variable called b = 10. We'll also create a variable called c = a + b. Using any standard operators, we can add, subtract, multiply, or divide 2 or more numbers or variables. We can echo c to see the result. You can create math equations as complex as you wish. Strings work a bit differently, but also give us some useful functionality. If we have our string from a previous video called Susan, which is equal to hello, we could append that string using the operator .=. This will add whatever comes after the equal sign onto the end of the string. For instance, Susan .= there. When we echo Susan, it now says hello there. In real-world practice, when creating variables, it is important to adopt and stick to a naming convention. A naming convention refers to the practices and rules that you stick to with regard to how you name your variables and how spaces or capitalization are handled. I won't dive into that too much right now, but there is a link in the description of this video to another tutorial I did on naming conventions for PHP. We can also use a dot in between multiple variables or strings to form another string that is the result of appending those strings. We're going to create a variable called name and assign it the value of Susan. Due to the name of our first variable being Susan, this is going to get a bit confusing. I apologize. Merely as an example, we could create a variable called sentence equal to Susan dot how are you? My name is name. When we echo sentence, we'll see hello there, how are you? My name is Susan. You'll see that we use the dot in between a variable and string to append these as one. Remember, this is appending the value of the variable with the value of the string. We could also append multiple variables or multiple strings or any combination. Because we use double quotes, we could also put our name variable directly inside of the string to be parsed and to present the value of that variable. The last thing we'll look at regarding interacting with variables, merely because I'm not currently planning on making an episode solely about this, is what's called a variable variable. A variable allows you to dynamically access or create another variable. For instance, if you are using PHP to handle user input from an HTML form, and your inputs were called input1, input2, and input3, we'll set this up by just creating input1, input2, and input3. We could create a loop with a variable called input name equals input underscore and then the number of our loop, meaning on each iteration it will be equal to input1, then input2, then input3. We do this by using the dot between the string input underscore and our number to append the number to the string. If we echo input name, it simply gives us the strings that we formed. It says input1, input2, and input3, and doesn't really help us. However, a variable has two $signs instead of one. If we add an additional $sign to this variable, it will now give us the value of a variable which has a name that matches the value of this variable. So instead of showing input1, it will show us the value of the variable named input1. On the second iteration of this loop, it will show us the value of the input named input2. Although this is not the best way to handle this sort of input, it would be better to use an array. I will get into arrays in a future episode. I'll also cover handling forms and how loops work in future episodes of this tutorial series as well. For now, I'm simply ignoring those things and attempting to keep this explanation of a variable as simple as possible. Variables can be useful in many situations, and so I thought it was worth mentioning to stick in the back of your mind for some time in the future when you are stumped at how to accomplish a certain task. That's it for today's Learn PHP tutorial. In the next episode, we'll look at how to understand PHP errors, as they can be quite annoying and frustrating to debug, especially when you are just beginning. If you found this to be helpful, please smash the like button. Please also consider subscribing and sharing this video, as it really helps me to continue to make more tutorial videos. If you're interested in learning other languages, please check out my other coding tutorials series. If you are not a beginner and already have a good knowledge of PHP, you may wish to check out some of my more advanced PHP tutorials. Thanks for watching.